Hi there, my name is Jessica Hope, CEO of Wimbart, a PR agency that specialises in African tech. Today I'll be discussing supporting entrepreneurship and innovation in Africa. Joining me, I have Fatou Touré, Fund Manager and Component Lead for Boost Africa's Technical Assistance Facility, and Tidjane Deme, who's General Partner at Partech. Boost Africa is a joint initiative of the African Development Bank and the European Investment Bank, whose mission is to drive private sector growth and create opportunities across Africa. Partech is an investment platform for technology and digital companies with a significant footprint in the African market with the Partech Africa Fund. They span 4 continents and 38 countries. However, our focus today is on Africa and the collaboration between Boost Africa and Partech following the launch of Partech's 7th annual African Tech Venture Capital Report. Thank you so much, Tidjane and Fatou, for joining this session today. My first question is going to Fatou. Perhaps, Fatou, you can give us a little bit more information and introduce the relationship between Boost Africa, the European Investment Bank, and funds such as Partech Africa.
I'll start by going into the relationship between Boost Africa and the EIB, and then talk about funds such as Partech. So the Boost Africa Technical Assistance Facility sits under a broader program, which is the Boost Africa program, a joint initiative of the European Investment Bank and the African Development Bank to enable and enhance entrepreneurship and innovation across sub-Saharan Africa. The technical assistance facility itself is funded by the European Union and the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, and the funding is managed by the European Investment Bank. The intervention of the Boost Africa Technical Assistance Facility intervene in threefold. The first one is to support and strengthen the core professional and operational skills of partner fund manager and the investee company to ensure that we catalyze investment into sector of high potential economic impact. The second intervention is to transfer or facilitate acquisition of best practice among fund, early stage companies and accelerator. And the third one is to deliver local business development advisory through the use of local experts. And one of the fund managers that the Boost Africa Technical Assistance Facility supports is Partech. The relationship started last year and it's ongoing currently, and we've intervened on both fronts already, the fund side and also the portfolio company side. And we can go into much more details later on if you like.
Super, thank you so much, Fatou. That's really, really helpful. So Tidjane, I guess this is the first collaboration under Boost Africa's Technical Assistance Facility, and Boost Africa supported the promotion of the report. For you, what would you say is the report's reception so far from the ecosystem, and how can other investors and startups take advantage of the insights?
Thanks for having me here first. As for this report, this is the 7th iteration of this report. We started issuing it in 2016 when we were raising our first fund, and we realized that it was extremely difficult to find hard data about the VC ecosystem in Africa. So we decided to publish the data we were able to collect. And it was welcomed very positively in the ecosystem. Everybody felt this is something that they needed to see, and it gave us a very strong motivation to continue doing it. So since we've been collecting the data, with a lot of goodwill and support from everybody in the ecosystem who's been sharing with us the transactions they've participated in or they know of, giving us all of the details with an agreement that we would only publish aggregate numbers and keep confidentiality. So this report have become a staple of the ecosystem really every year, providing consistent number with a consistent methodology that allows people to track really trends in the ecosystem. And as for the support of Boost Africa, I want to note that yes, the formal support between Partech Africa and Boost Africa started last year, but to be fair, Partech Africa would not exist without the Boost Africa program, because we've received since Fund 1 investment from the African Development Bank and the European Investment Bank within the framework of the Boost Africa program. So we are absolutely a poster child of Boost Africa, and we are happy to receive continued support from this program.
Thank you very much, Tidjane. And so leading on from there, so what can Boost Africa for example, do to support investment funds like Partech? Fatou, maybe you can give us some examples of other ways that you have collaborated with, not just Partech, but other funds as well.
Yes, of course. So the technical assistance facility is to provide, support to the Boost Africa program funds such as Partech and others. And the support is quite wide-ranging. It can be on ESG, for example, data and policy. It can be on impact assessment or measurement or policy, risk management, communication, leadership, tax. It varied. It's driven by the demand and also the needs that we see. Coming to Partech in particular, maybe I should have said it earlier. I want to congratulate Tidjane on the first close of the Partech Africa second fund, making it the largest Africa-focused fund in Africa. So, congratulations and well done. So for Partech in particular, at Boost Africa, we recognize that they have been a pioneer in regularly recording, monitoring, and publishing data around the African tech space. And as investment grows in that space, the value of that data cannot be understated. So Partech this time around was looking for support to build this capacity into amplifying the finding of the report and remain the primary reference for this type of data. So the Boost Africa Technical Assistance Facility was able to help Partech's PR team with WIMBAT, which is an independent PR agency specialized in Africa and emerging market, to design and execute a media strategy to support the Partech Africa Tech Venture Capital Report launch for 2022. Some of the activities that were supported was, for example, expanding Partech's media outreach, the press release development and distribution. Jessica, you can go into more details of the actual support that you did. But what we wanted to highlight during this campaign were the unique selling point of Partech's report, because they've been the first to do that, but others have since following their footsteps. We wanted to make sure that with this campaign, this unique selling point came across. The first one being that the Partech's consistent methodology in collecting the data, and also the second one was the robust approach to data collection to include even undisclosed deals. And the third one was to also capture, Partech also captures debt funding, which sparked the interest on a wider media outlet. So I think through this TA, this campaign has been successful. And if you look at the numbers of download, website visit, newsletter sign up, social media follower, I think all the numbers are on an overall increase on all front compared to last year, and this is the kind of work that we wanted to provide to one of our partner funds.
Great, thank you very much, Fatou. And it's interesting, obviously WIMBAT works really closely with Boost Africa and obviously with Partech as well. And the PR and the communication seems like a very small part after the huge amount of work that Partech has done over the year in terms of capturing the data. And the Partech annual report, as Tidjane already mentioned, it's in its 7th year. So people really do look for it. We know that the Partech team actually has journalists saying, when is the data coming? They're ready because they know it's amazing, robust data. So for us, it's making sure that as many people have access to it as possible across many different media streams as well. It's not just the old days of putting in a newspaper. We have to think about broadcasts and social media and stakeholder relations, and as well as online interviews as well. And obviously then it's a balancing act for Tidjane to not only carry on his day-to-day work of building portfolio companies, as well as collecting data, probably already thinking about the 2023 report as well, but then also being a spokesperson and an advocate for the amazing work that Partech has done. And the report threw out some really, really interesting new data this year as well. So Tidjane, maybe you could take a moment or two to give us some insight into some of the data that the report showed this year. I think we saw African technology startups raised 6.5 billion, a slight increase on the previous year. Maybe you can kind of give us a little bit more flavor on the data.
I will, but I just wanted to call out something you said about the importance of the media part of this work. The ultimate impact of this report is to advocate for the African tech ecosystem. By putting this data out there, we send a very strong message about this market, how it is growing and maturing and what's going on in there. And it's been key to attracting more investors to this market, investors who intervene when startups grow beyond our investment scope even, and allow them to continue growing and scaling to become global champions. And the only way this happens is if this story gets out there. It's extremely important. So thanks again for supporting us through this. So the story out there this year was extremely unique, I would say, because remember, we are closing 2022, a year that was a challenging year for VC everywhere in the world, where we saw VC investments scale down by 35% across the globe. And as we were preparing and comparing the report, the question was, how will the African ecosystem weather this crisis, this global crisis, after having gone through COVID 2 years ago, when the market is barely emerging? So it seemed like a string of bad luck. However, we were confident because, frankly, we knew that the forces of growth driving the ecosystem are resilient beyond this crisis, because these forces are talent pool that is growing, a very deep and growing talent pool of tech entrepreneurs in Africa, the digitization of African users who have now access to mobile phone and internet, and economic sectors that are deep enough to benefit from this digitization. So the outcome was that these forces of growth won. The African tech sector is still growing. African companies, tech startups raised $6.5 billion in 2022, a 8% growth from 2021. And even more importantly, this was achieved by leveraging more debt than ever, with debt doubling from $750 million to $1.5 billion in 2022. And a strong signal actually of more positive things to come. So we were extremely pleased with this outcome, showing that the African ecosystem is not only growing, but growing against the headwinds, and doing that by using new instruments that were not available before for African startups. It is an extremely positive outcome.
Thank you very much, Tidjane. And it's interesting what you said really about, it's a resource for other investors as well. And, investors need data, they need evidence before they're going to start writing checks, large or small. And so Partech is, a year-round resource really. Do you ever find a situation where people are quoting your own data back to you?
Love it. We love it when the
Yes.
data is being quoted back to us. It's a sign that it's been used. We also like when other investors come to us and tell us they're using this data on their decks when they're fundraising, which is, again, we couldn't hope for more impact. We're extremely proud of the impact of this report.
Okay, thank you. And just in terms of the impact as well, one of the things that we found particularly interesting this year in terms of the report was, the fact that, debt funding has doubled to 1.5 billion as well last year. So what does this say more generally about the market, and how is the market going to cope?
So if you think about it, African startups have been sort of cornered into using only one tool, one instrument to fit all of their needs for growth, all of their needs for capital. And that instruments have been equity rounds, which are great to absorb the risk of early stage startups, but should not be used to fund some levels of growth like working capital, like asset financing, because there are much better and cheaper instruments to do this, which are not dilutive. But African startups could not access this instrument because mostly the perception of the maturity and this stability of the ecosystem was not very high. So the fact that debt is taking off is a signal that lenders globally are recognizing the potential of this ecosystem, are recognizing that African startups now have proven stable business models over years, that some of these startups are on a path to profitability or are already profitable and can then graduate to this level where they can leverage this. It means startups will be able to grow more and faster while keeping the dilution for the early stage investors and for the founders acceptable. It is a very important milestone. To give a specific example, it is widely accepted that the biggest barrier for more growth in financial inclusion in Africa, in fintech startups driving this financial inclusion, is access to debt. So it was very important for us then to see this trend and highlight it, and also create an appetite maybe for more lenders to come into this market.
That's helpful, thank you. And just on the subject then of fintech, Fatou, if I can ask you, we see it remains still the number one sector across the continent to attract investment, and Boost Africa's goal is very much to support fund management teams to catalyze innovative investments and sectors with high potential for growth. So we can assume that fintech is that sector. But other than fintech, what other sectors would you say are also creating opportunities for Africa? And what are the sectors that Boost Africa, for example, will be looking ahead at in the future?
That's a good question to refer back to the Partech report, actually. Looking at it in terms of deal volume and deal count, I think apart from fintech, like you said, what we've seen is from the report is clean tech is on the rise, e-commerce, mobile commerce, social commerce as well, enterprises and health tech are all on the right. That's from the report, so I invite everyone to dive into it. From a personal perspective, I would say all the sectors that enable Africans to achieve financial and social inclusion are what are important sectors that we should focus on.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And I guess just to round up our discussion as well, Tidjane, what would your advice be to other funds or part of Boost Africa's portfolio in terms of using them, getting their support, collaborating with them after your first kind of big piece of work with them?
It is important to remember that Boost Africa is around supporting what I call emerging fund managers in Africa. Frankly, when we first started talking to Boost Africa, we were raising our first fund, and it was very difficult to get that type of support from such an important investor when you're a first-time fund manager. And most African fund managers today are at that phase. And at that phase, you also need a lot of technical support just to get the fund's operations going on, to get the ability to do your job, find startups, support them, create the right type of support for your startups. And this is what Boost Africa is about. For us, it is, you have to understand that going through a technical assistance program was not something obvious for us initially, because we work with a global European team that doesn't have access to this kind of instruments. So it was actually a very good surprise for Partech to learn that we could access this type of support from the Boost Africa Technical Facility. I think we actually have underused this technical assistance facility. Fatou, I'm coming after you more, I promise. Because if you think about it, all the tools in terms of consulting that could be leveraged not only to help us, but also to help our companies do their job better. If you think about, for instance, what we're doing here with the report, we've worked together in terms of putting the report out there. But in terms of collecting data, producing analysis that is useful for the ecosystem, there is still a lot more to do out there. And an investment team cannot focus, or can only focus so much time on this. So we need more resources to go out there and collect more data, crunch more numbers, and serve to the ecosystem better analysis that they can use. So there is a lot more to do, and I can only say this first collaboration just gave us more appetite.
Super, thank you very much, Tidjane. And I guess, Fatou, from your perspective, what can Partech do, more of in order to, capitalize and build on this collaboration and other portfolio funds as well? Like, how should they be connecting with you to, build really meaningful and long-term partnerships?
We are here for them. It all starts with, a discussion, having the lines of communication open, to be able to also, another thing is to be able maybe to assess the fund and the portfolio company to determine, the areas of need where we can come and support them. Like I said, our support is quite wide ranging. So it's to continuously, open the line of communication and be able, because the need might not be present right now, it can be present further down the line. And we are always, this program is running for a few number of years now, so we will be there to partner with them throughout the journey of the investment into the continent. So for Partech, I just wanted to highlight the fact that Tidjane said he's been underused, and we welcome him to overuse it. But we've worked also with some of their portfolio company and providing them support, for example, on developing and implementing a sales strategy for one of the portfolio company in Ethiopia. And also we can provide, for example, leadership and management coaching for management of a portfolio company, which we have done for a second portfolio company of Partech. And we're looking forward to doing more on both the fund side and the portfolio company side. So Tidjane, you said you're coming after me. I'm ready, and we are ready.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Fatou. And what an exciting first collaboration. I feel that you both just made more work for each other in a good way, in a positive way, but more of the same. Certainly from a Wimbart perspective, it's been an absolute pleasure working not only with the Boost Africa team, but also with the Partech team, Tidjane and his entire team as well. And we're really pleased with the results. There's still more work, so Tidjane, we will be coming after you as well for more communications, opportunities and ways to spread the word about the report. But yeah, thank you both so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure hearing from both of you, and we look forward to more collaborations in the future.